The author of the passage suggests which of the following about Hamlet. So we go here to answer choice A. It says Hamlet has usually attracted critical interpretations that tend to stiffen into theses. Now this is interesting because it mentions this stiffening into theses here in line number 9. So let's read that. It says, this is not because such an interpretation necessarily stiffens into a thesis, okay, but because Wuthering Heights has recalcitrant elements. So we have to ask ourselves, does this mention here stiffen into a thesis? Does this relate to what's going on here with Hamlet? And so if you just read stiffen into thesis, you go, oh yeah, it makes sense. But what does that have to do with Hamlet? And that's why we need to read on. And so we want to read all the way from line 9 all the way to the end. So again, this is not because an interpretation necessarily stiffens into a thesis, but because Wuthering Heights has recalcitrant elements of undeniable power. Okay, and here's the important part. So that these recalcitrant elements resist inclusion into an all-encompassing interpretation. And so it's really difficult, basically in our own words, have an all-encompassing, well, I guess that's kind of their words too, all-encompassing interpretation. And in this respect, Wuthering Heights shares a feature with Hamlet, this all-encompassing interpretation. It's difficult to do, or I guess when you have an interpretation, you interpret it to interpret for both Hamlet and Wuthering Heights. However, here it's talking about the stiffening into a thesis, and that's separate from the idea of that both Hamlet and Wuthering Heights escape or resist this all-encompassing thesis. So A is not the answer. But the good news is, what does answer choice B say? It says that Hamlet has elements that are not amenable to an all-encompassing critical interpretation. And if something is amenable, it's cooperative, it goes along, you can basically mold it in a certain way in this case, but we can't. We're saying that this all-encompassing interpretation, both of these books, or both of these novels, are not amenable. They don't fit into it. And that, of course, goes back to what we just said a second ago. So B is an answer. And then we look at C. Hamlet is less open to an all-encompassing critical interpretation than is Wuthering Heights. No, we said they both are. They both resist an all-encompassing interpretation. So both A and C are out, and the answer is B.